I'm your host, Chuck from Starlight Starbright Observatory. We're here with our good friend Frank Lopez from Stellar Vision Astronomy here in Tucson, Arizona. Today we're going to be talking about how to buy your first telescope if you're wanting to get into astronomy. There's a ton of scopes you can buy. You're going to see that in just a minute here, how many scopes are in this shop. It's absolutely overwhelming. I hear that from many customers that come in when I'm down here with Frank, and they absolutely have no idea what they're doing. We didn't when we first started, and luckily, if you have an astronomy shop close with someone who's knowledgeable like Frank, they'll lead you in the right direction. We relied really heavily on Frank when we first started because we didn't know anything, and we still don't really know anything, and that's why we still talk to Frank. So we're gonna start by going through and showing you the different types of telescopes, and then we'll talk about our expectations of what's really going to happen when you buy your first scope. Okay, Frank's going to discuss with us. This is a 8-inch Dobsonian reflector. This is probably the most popular style and probably the easiest kind of scope to get into, correct?
Right.
At first.
Yeah, it's because it's just a simple optical tube sitting on a rocker box, so they call it.
Okay.
And it's using it, moving it around. I'm just giving a demonstration. This
Okay.
is your up and down motion here, and then this is your, you can turn it 360 to get it. So you don't have to worry about alignment to the North Star, polar alignment as it's called. Clean and simple, and this one doesn't have a finder, but it should have a finder scope. Use the finder to get your object, and then you look in the eyepiece and then focus accordingly with whatever eyepiece you might have in there. But this is the simplest way and the least expensive way to buy a telescope. Is a reflector on a Dobsonian mount.
Okay, and this is basically, you have to find the stars and focus in on it. It doesn't do anything for you, so you would need some type of navigational aid like Stellarium or something on your phone if you're just beginning to try and figure out where stuff is at, correct?
You use star hopping, so you can use a planisphere or just look at a bright object and put your finder on there and focus on that and just surf the sky, just look around, or like you said, if you have an app.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the app will show you where objects are at. Most objects are next to a star, and that's where star hopping comes in, where you get to the star and then move it up either up or down or side to side until you find a diffused object, and then you focus accordingly, and then adjust the power by whatever eyepiece you might be using.
Okay.
And have.
Okay, so there it is. Frank just told us this is probably a very economical way as far as telescope price points would be. I think Frank said this one would be about $400 entry for a good used 8-inch reflector.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be something to look at because you don't want to get discouraged. So we have this style, and then of course if you wanted to upgrade, this is would be the more expensive of the Dobsonian style reflectors, correct? Because this is obviously like a 12 or 12.5-inch scope with a drive on it.
Yeah, this one in particular has a go-to system. It's an object locator to help you find objects and track also. And the unique design of it, it's got the canister where the mirror is held, and it's got the trusses here that holds the upper carriage. And in essence, you could use it like the Dobsonian here on a rocker box. This one has the capability of with motors on both axes, the declination and the azimuth, to help you locate objects and track.
So you can still manually use the scope or with the motor.
Or go full on.
Okay. Now another thing I just want to mention, these are probably not great for astrography, correct? Because of the way the mounts are?
Well, it's L-azimuth, so it's going to walk up the staircase of the zenith and walk down to the western horizon. So for imaging, the most you could do is maybe the moon, and maybe the planets, but anything else, no.
Okay. So these are more visual style scopes. They're great for visuals and using. You'll need an array of lenses and eyepieces for these to use these. So, and this price point is this is probably getting up into the thousands, correct?
This is like $2,500 for this particular unit right
Okay, which still, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's around $2,500, but as far as scopes goes, that is very economical for something that you could do a vast array of things with, correct?
Yeah.
Perfect.
The cost reflects on this one being a 12.5-inch piece of glass, and then being the go-to mechanism, the motors that it has here is to help you locate and track objects.
Okay.
That's why it's at that price point.
Okay, but remember, even with the even though it's extra money, the go-to, if you're just starting out, once you figure out how to align the scope, once you bring it out, is probably, I think, your best option. This way you're not getting discouraged on trying to find stuff. We've tried to do that before and it's not very fun. And if you don't know a lot, it's very discouraging.
Yeah, you'll be pulling down objects the very first night that you're...
Right, yeah. This, when you have something with a motor on it, once you learn how to set it up, you're going to what you want to find and you're enjoying the stars without getting mad at your equipment. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at here, we're going to pull a refractor out and we're going to look at one of those. All right, so we've pulled out a refractor here on an all-azimuth go-to mount. This is a very popular setup also. Just to note that you don't have to have, this is a Celestron mount, but it is not a Celestron telescope. I think it's a Stellar View or something. And the eyepiece, the diagonal is Orion. So you can really mix and match your telescopes and your mounts. Usually everything is designed to sort of bolt together and go together. Everything is standard sizes for your eyepieces, 1.25" or 2" and just basically what you buy, you should be able to piece together and sort of Frankenstein something together, but everything usually works together. And as long as your scope is not too heavy for the mount you have, you should be just fine. And Frank's going to tell us a little bit about the refractor and what you would be able to see with this style of scope.
Yeah, it's set up on a pretty rigid tripod that's adjustable for height, for leveling. And then you have the azimuth type mount here that goes east and west, and then you have your declination motion here for your north and south. And this particular unit has a hand control that has, it's a go-to setup, and it has over 30,000 objects already programmed into it. So
wow. Once
you do an alignment procedure, you can go to whatever's out tonight. And if it isn't out, it'll tell you either it's below horizon or it's already gone, it hasn't come up or it has already gone below the horizon.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, but it'll also track once you find your object. And we have this particular setup here on a short refractor, so when it goes straight up to the zenith,
oh, okay.
It won't bottom out and hit your base at the bottom. So you got to take that into consideration.
Okay.
And then, of course, being a refracting system, it's got refractors lenses. This one has two elements in the front. Then you have a diagonal, and then the eyepiece goes here, and then it's got the focusing mechanism here. So really clean, simple setup.
So in a refractor, other than the diagonal, there's no mirrors in these, correct? These are all lenses.
Strictly lenses.
Okay, okay. Whereas these other styles, the reflectors, all have a giant mirror in them.
A mirror and a secondary mirror.
Okay.
Right to the eyepiece, yeah.
Okay, okay.
This is the purest light you can get it through a refractor. It comes right in through the objective lens. It goes through the path up to the diagonal to the eyepiece and focus accordingly. It's the purest path of light you can get. And it's also the most expensive design in the industry because you have to match either whether it has 2 or 3 elements perfectly to each other, so it gives you that perfect image.
Okay, okay. So a refractor, probably if you want to get into these would be starting to get into your more expensive style of telescopes.
Right. Yeah.
Not necessarily the mount. What I do want to stress though, if you're doing a go-to mount, if you're just starting out, something like this is wonderful because this is also all azimuth, and this would not really be for like imaging, correct?
No, it won't track great for imaging because it's going up. It's tracking from the eastern horizon to the zenith in like a staircase effect, and then it'll go down the steps to the western horizon. Okay. But for viewing, you would never notice that.
Okay. Okay. So the mount, real quick, is super important. The mount may even be, I think, the most important part of your setup if you want to do any type of actual imaging. If you're just doing, at Starlight, Starbright, we do live EAA, which is electronically assisted astronomy. Although we do astrography with stacking, we don't really do astrography as in taking pictures. We just take whatever the stack gives us. We do a little bit of editing, and we have enough equipment to make us look good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, more control.
we have more control. So the mount is going to be super important. If that is going to be your end goal, you may want to buy a little less scope and a little more mount, figuring that in the future you can upgrade to something that's better to go on your mount as you get more into astrography and you think you like that.
Yeah, so if they want to have fun doing just observing session, this is a nice setup right here.
Right.
It's out there as a mount, and it's priced pretty good. It's not that expensive. And then you can add any type of scope onto this setup here.
Okay.
It's on a V-type mount, so it's pretty easy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So here's the V-type mount right here, and then it'll go into the male to the female. And of course, it has to be the right size, because if it bottoms out, you don't want it to hit the
Right,
size.
right.
So you can put a Cassegrain here, or a short reflector, or a short refractor.
Okay.
This type of mount.
Okay.
So it makes sense. So you can mix and match it based on, and we do this all the time just to show people what can be done. It doesn't have to be all Celestron or all Stellar V or all
Okay.
Orion. We mix and stuff up like that, and then depending on what the individual's trying to do and wants to do.
Okay.
I'm trying to put this on here. It does go easier than that.
So you could have this mount, and you could have several smaller different types of scope just to go on this mount
Yeah.
for different, if you're trying to view different objects.
Yeah, a refractor is mainly good for a little bit of everything, but mainly planets and stars. A refractor.
Okay.
Get the purest light and get less aberration and coma because of the design of the glass.
Okay.
But yeah, you can interchange optical tubes based on how it fits within the setup. there.
Okay. Now, what is this is a smaller, this is probably what, about 60 millimeters?
This scope over here is 80 millimeters.
Oh, this is 80 millimeters. Okay. So price point on something like this, what would this run you? Because this is not a huge scope, obviously,
No.
and it would probably be a better starter scope. And what would your price range be, like, if you went down to the astronomy shop and bought something like this?
Well, this combination right here is priced at $1,200.
Okay.
This happens to be just $1,200. Again, it depends on what scope we have on here, but this is a pretty good piece of glass, so it's got
Okay.
a little bit of cost on it, but it's worth the cost. And the cost reflects how good the glass is going to be in the
Correct.
mechanics. But this combination right here is about $1,200.
Okay. And this is a nice combination. And I was talking to
It's kind of light to eat.
right? It's good and portable. I was talking to Frank earlier before we started that there's a lot of telescopes for sale. You see them at, you can go to Costco or Walmart or Amazon, and there's a lot of sort of off-brand scopes. And there is a lot of like Celestron telescopes and Orion telescopes. You'll see those. And I hate to say this, but I would call those scopes hobby killers. The glass or the mirrors are very cheap. The imaging is very poor. The motors and the tracking are very poor, and they're just not built very well. So if you're looking to get into that couple $100 scope, you're really not going to be able to do much more than the moon, and that may even not be that clear, correct?
Well, you compare it to a good piece of glass, you'll notice a difference. But like we talked about today, any scope is a good scope.
True.
You have to understand that price reflects how good the glass is going to be, the mechanics and the mount. So a couple $100 will buy you something. That's all I can say.
Okay, and always, some scope is always better than no scope, but we hate anybody to be discouraged to getting into this.
It can get better, but it
Yes.
takes a little more money.
Yes. Okay. All right. We're going to pull out something different here, and then we're going to show you something different.
All right.
Go ahead. All right. So Frank has gone and got us. This is another refractor, but this is on a more expensive mount. This is a little iOptron equatorial mount. So I'll let Frank explain this because he's going to explain it a lot better than I could. But this, when you really get into the hobby, or want to get into the hobby, and you have a little extra money, this mount, this style mount is the way to go, right?
Well, if you're going to do imaging, this
Okay.
is what it's going to do. Although this will track as good as an L-Datham mount, but this will track smoothly across the arc of the sky from where we are from the equator, versus this walking up the step to the zenith and walking down the step to the horizon. But so if you want to do any imaging, an equatorial mount will do what you want it to do. And this is a fairly medium small. This will hold 25 pounds of optical tube. And it's
Okay.
got the same type of tripod that the Aspen has, and it's good enough to support this type of mount here. And it's got the counterweight to offset the balance of the optical tube in right ascension, and then you adjust the tube forward and backwards for balancing for declination.
Okay.
So, and being a go-to mount as well, again, it's got a hand control that has all the dials for you that'll you command it to wherever you want to go after you do an alignment procedure. These normally have a 2-star alignment procedure, the North Star and another reference star.
Okay.
So it'll track smoothly across the sky versus your L-Datham mount. But visually, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference looking through the eyepiece.
Okay.
But again, if you're doing any imaging, because
Okay.
it's going smoothly across the sky, this is going to track, this is the way to go with an equatorial design.
Okay. And what size is this scope?
This is an 80 millimeter as well.
Okay.
It's an older Vixen piece of glass that we got in with the optical tube. Vixen, German made, Japanese made, I'm sorry, it's a good piece of glass also.
Okay, so this is a nice refractor.
This is a real nice setup right here.
Okay.
And again, we try to carry from medium to high-end equipment. We try not to get the Walmart sort of.
Yeah,
because,
right.
It's just who we are. We just want to have some medium to high-end. This way there's less issues with the end user when they get something.
Okay, okay.
That's where we're at. So
Now this here setup, so if you wanted to get into some of the smaller or less expensive ZWO, I'm just going to say ZWO and cameras, only because we use Malicam at Starlight, Starbright, but they are more on the higher end. When you start to get into the cameras, they start up to get into the thousands of dollars, where you can buy a smaller ZWO camera really pretty cheaply, and they give you good results for the money. So this type of telescope setup, if you wanted to get into imaging or electronically assisted astronomy, this would be a great starter setup with a very small camera, right?
it can be, yes. Again, a camera depends on how good it's going to be, depending on the budget. Has a lot to do with
Right.
it. But the inexpensive cameras aren't too bad.
I mean,
the way
they're-
they make it now.
They're great to like us are visually challenged as we get older. I love having the big picture on the monitor, and your family can watch it too without everybody trying to run up and fight over the eyepiece. And you can also pull the color out of the images that you're looking at with a camera and doing imaging, where you're doing visual. Your eye really can't discern a lot of that color.
Too far away.
It's too far away. So, but yes, this is a wonderful little setup. And if somebody walked into your shop and they said, "Hey, I'm new," and you recommended something like this, what could they expect to pay for a nice setup like this?
Okay, this setup right here, let's see. Probably within, I think this is like, actually it's almost the same price as there. It's almost $1,500.
Okay.
Because it's the pre-owned scope, and this is a pre-owned mount as well. When we get pre-owned equipment, we go through them thoroughly to bring them back to factory specs. So that's what reflects the price when we resell
Okay.
it, and has a warranty and support after that.
Okay.
This mount new is probably about maybe $1,500 by itself, I believe.
Okay.
This 25 ioptron mount, and then this optical tube here was it's a real good piece of glass. So you're probably let me see, you're probably saving about maybe 40% buying it pre-owned
Oh, wow.
versus new.
Okay.
But again, we get a lot of pre-owned equipment here, so
And let's be honest, I mean, pre-owned, it doesn't really go bad, right? It's glass.
you have to do something to it, and if it's if we have and if it's on the floor, it's won't be able to tell if it's pre-owned or not. Like this
Okay.
one here looks all practically new.
Right.
Even
And
this one here.
right. And now, for you that watch our streams and all, and watch our big telescope. All the equipment we have, except for our cameras and the filters and a few other things, are used, and we have gotten everything here from Frank here in Tucson at Stellar Vision. And he's gave us a wonderful deals on it, but it still does cost a lot of money. But just to reiterate, if you can, spend a little extra money to be satisfied so that your expectations are met. And we'll look at a couple bigger telescopes here in this next little segment, and then after that, we're going to talk about the expectations and what you're actually going to be able to see with some of these scopes. All right, so we're in a different part of the shop here. This shop is, it's not a huge building, but it is jam-packed full of pre-owned amazing scopes. And here's another one. This is a very popular scope in a very popular style. This is an all-azimuth, and this is a Celestron. I believe this is an 8-inch, correct?
8-inch CPC, that's the model.
Right, and this is a Cassegrain style scope, and these are super popular. And this is actually a Cassegrain is what we use at Starlight Starbright Observatory. And that's what you see on our live EAA shows. And Frank's going to tell us a little bit about this and what we can expect from a scope like this.
Well, this is an 8-inch piece of glass, just like the first one we saw, the Reflector. It's got the same amount of light, but this one has a longer focal length because of the design being multiple glasses.
Even though it's shorter?
Even though, yeah, because it's shorter, it's got 3 pieces of glass to make it this short.
Okay.
And that's why they're more popular. You can get a lot of scope in a compact package. Like
Okay.
Being only 13 inches in length here, it's a lot to carry this versus to carry the first one we saw, whether it be on an equatorial mount or alpha-azimuth. This is why these are more popular. This has a longer focal length, a longer f-stop, so it has more capabilities. It's more flexible because you can have what they call reducers in the back to reduce the f-stop and the focal length for wider field.
Oh.
And and again, this is an alpha-azimuth. It's got a even more heavier duty type tripod to support this type of setup here.
Yeah, that's super. That's a super big tripod.
And the heavy duty 4 times, and then the optical too. It's just the design, the way Celestron designed it. This can also go be put on a wedge, so it'll go equatorial for polar alignment.
Oh, okay.
And track an equatorial mount. So this is this Cassegrain here design. Again, they're the most popular scopes for any of the scopes, would be a reflector or refractor. And it's about medium price range for something like that. And it also has a hand control just like the other ones, with all the possible buttons to give you all the commands you want to give it. These also have 30,000 objects programmed into it.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
The cool thing about the Cassegrain, you get a lot of scope in a compact package, so it's easier to transport, store, and of course to set it up wherever you want to go, from the backyard to your vehicle out to darker skies.
Okay, okay. Now, the 8-inch is super popular, right, Frank? You can see a lot within 8-inch.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay. And then this is probably, I don't know if I'm going to say it's probably the best type of starter scope that you can do. I think from the little bit that I know, obviously Frank is much more knowledgeable, this is a great investment that will actually probably last you probably quite a while.
Could be a hand-me-down.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you could use this and keep this. And I don't think with something like this, an 8-inch Cassegrain style scope, I don't think you would really ever be disappointed. I think it's a wonderful instrument. Now, if someone were to walk into here and they said, hey Frank, we got a little bit of a budget, we want to get into astronomy, you know, what would it take to get into something like this price point wise?
Well, the price reflects on how we get them in and the condition, how old it is, and those kind of things. But this particular model here being, this is probably about maybe 12 years old.
Okay.
We've gone through it thoroughly, and it's back to factory spec, so it's like new. And this is about $1,800 for this particular unit.
Oh,
here,
wow.
complete here, which is, and new, they're in the $2,800 value.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
almost $1,000 off from a new one to a pre-owned piece of equipment that can do exactly the same thing as a new one. It's the way we get them in.
Okay, okay. So, and this is a really nice scope. It sounds like a lot of money, but in the scope world, it's really not that much money. $1,800 is going to get you a really nice telescope. This is a beautiful pre-owned scope. There's lots of beautiful pre-owned scopes in here. And here's another thing. Obviously, you can look on your Facebook Marketplace or, you know, any of your online sort of astronomy sites. There's always classified ads in there. But I will say, if you can go to your local astronomy shop, or you're even within, you know, even a few hours drive of Tucson here, or you want to make the trip, you want to call Frank, you want to set something up, an appointment to come look at scopes. Remember, when you're just starting out, the support that Frank is able to give you when you buy a scope is amazing. We started out and we had a big Meade telescope, a 12-inch, and we had some problems with it, and Frank was instrumental in getting the scope working right, and then we upgraded. But hey, that is super important when you have a support system, and when you have a little bit of a guarantee behind the product. If you were buying from someone, that's pretty much what you're doing. You're buying from someone, and you know, these scopes are instruments, and they're very delicate, and they require some looking at and sometimes some maintenance to keep in top shape, and that's where Frank comes in, or your local astronomy shop. So that's super important when you're looking, and if you're spending that type of money, sometimes it may not be behoove you to save a couple $100 when it's better to spend that extra money and get the support and get a little bit of a guarantee. That makes all the difference in the world, because you don't want to waste money on buying one of these, and you don't want to get discouraged, because it can be very discouraging getting into astronomy. All right, so we're going to take a look at probably the higher end of people's budgets here next, and then we'll talk about our expectations. All right, so this here is probably, this is where you're starting to get into some money to get into astronomy, and this would be probably sort of, I'm going to call it like, not an end user setup, but something that you're going to be a little bit more dedicated to the hobby, and you're really enjoying it. And I'd like to say that this here, I already know, is a Los Mandy, a G11 mount. This is the same style mount we have at Starlight Starbright Observatory. This one here has the nice little tucked in motors. Ours does not. You know, has the counterweights with the giant tripod. And this here, I already know, is this is the Gemini 2 go-to system on it. It's all a touchscreen hand controller, and they're absolutely amazing. And these mounts, they do still require a little bit of maintenance, but they pretty much do what they're supposed to do all the time. And I believe that this mount, Frank, holds around 60 pounds, does it not?
This mount holds 60 pounds.
Yeah, so right now there's an 8-inch on here, but obviously, or this is a 10-inch? So this is a 10-inch, and at Starlight Starbright we have a 14-inch, and we have about 50-some pounds on ours, and it still operates correctly. So this is a beautiful, beautiful piece of equipment. But this is where you're starting to get money, and Frank's going to tell us a little bit more about this, and then the price points of what it would take to actually get into something like this.
Yeah, this is it's getting into the high dollar run. New, this scope is, I think, almost $4,000 right here.
Just for the mount?
Yeah, just for the mount right here. And then with the equatorial mount, with the Gemini 2, I think it's another $1,800 added to that.
Okay.
You get the appropriate stepper motors that go to it with the touchscreen system there. Again, you get into the higher dollars, but that's where you're at, and you're a little bit more into the field. And so, but you want a better piece of equipment that will carry more weight, more optical tube. Like say, you have a 14-inch on there. You can go up to 60 pounds on this particular mount right here. And it's got the extra heavy duty bigger legs
Right,
here.
yeah, those legs are huge.
To support this mount, to support up to the weight up to 60 pounds. And again, being a German equatorial mount, like one of the other mounts we saw, you have the counterweights to support the weight for right ascension, and then the declination is moved side in and out for that balancing motion.
Okay.
And we happen to have a 10-inch caster grain on this one here, just the way it came in, the way we have it set up. And then you can, the nice thing about German equatorial mounts, you can again interchange optical tubes. You have a reflector, a refractor, a caster grain. So you can have multiple optical tubes for one mount, so you can have different, depending on your observing techniques of what you're trying to do.
And really, realistically, I think, I don't think there's much that you could buy as an end user that you couldn't put in this mount, correct?
And this really isn't a very top shelf mount, but it's a very good piece of equipment.
Right.
There's more expensive, there's mounts that could just go, astronomical.
Right. That's one of the that's one of our wish lists to do something like a plan waiver, like a gearless mount. But those things are literally in the thousands and thousands of dollars. They're up into the five, 6 figures, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy. So, but this here, this is what we use at the observatory, and it's pretty much flawless all the time. And and you don't have to start out with a 14-inch scope. The mount is very important. So if you have the extra money and you think you're really going to get into the hobby, this type of mount is amazing. And they also, I think Los Manny makes a smaller mount than this, don't they? With the same design?
Yeah, they make the GM8, which will hold less weight up to 30 pounds.
Okay.
This holds 60, and they even make a big one that will hold up to 90 pounds.
Oh, wow.
A Titan, which is massive. We just delivered one a few weeks ago, and makes this one look small.
Wow.
But that's what it takes. The mount has a lot to do with what kind of optical tube you're going to put on top of it, and what you're trying to do, the type of imaging. When people are doing this type of setup here, you're doing really serious imaging. Most of the time, not necessarily all the time, but most of the time that's the idea. Why would I pay more money for a mount, get some sophistication like this design here, well-machined piece of equipment? Because you want the tracking for imaging has a lot to do with how clean and good your images are going to be.
Right. So, and at Starlight Observatory, if you've watched our streams, we usually do, we try to stay within anywhere between 15 to 30 seconds on our exposure times. And we have a lot of, even though our mount holds 60 pounds, we're up there. So you don't really want to max your mount out, because we're not going to get into it now. That'll be for another day. But there's a lot that goes into that, where you can actually start getting flexure in your mount from the extra weight. Even though the mount can support it, you're really not supposed to go up to 60 pounds on it, because the imaging won't be that great. But this is a wonderful piece of equipment, and if you can do it, obviously we would recommend it. And how much is, if somebody comes in here, Frank, and says, I think I want to do it, just that's what we did. We said we want to do it. What do we need to buy to do it, and how much is this going to cost us to get out of the door and start seeing the universe?
So you're interested in this one?
Well, I don't know if I'm interested in this one.
Well, this setup right here is probably in the $4,500 range, being pre-owned, and you're saving like maybe close to 40% from new for this particular unit. But that's just what it takes, even being pre-owned, and especially when we go through them thoroughly to bring them back to their factory specs, and then give them a warranty and support. But this is again a good piece of equipment. Yeah,
this is an amazing piece of equipment. Don't get me wrong, all the equipment in here is amazing. Right down to the sort of mid, we're going to call them not the low end, the mid end to the high end. We would really recommend, and I'm sure Frank would too, to always start with like a mid-entry scope, because the bottom ones from Costco or Walmart, they're just not very good. And if you're paying a couple $100 for your scope, that's what you're getting. Although still, some scope is better than no scope. You could buy a couple $100 scope and go out and look at the moon and get hooked and go, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. Let's mortgage the house and we're going to go out and buy some crazy equipment. That's kind of what we did, and we're still paying for it. But that's okay. We love it. We love doing this. So this is really sort of a more realistic view of some of the other videos that you're going to see on really what you need to buy to sort of be successful and not be discouraged and be happy in the purchase that you've made. And then we come back, we're going to walk to a different part of the shop here, and we're going to talk about our expectations and actually what some of these scopes can see. Okay. So Frank has been wonderful, and he showed us all these amazing different style scopes, as you can see back here. I'm sure our wonderful co-host who was filming has sort of panned around already and showed you all this amazing equipment in here. But let's talk about our expectations of what you want when you buy your telescope. If you're just doing something casual, you don't think you really want to get into it, something on the smaller side, like of what we first saw with Frank. Let's talk about like the Dobsonian refractor on that's sort of more like an entry-level style scope, around $400 price point, pre-owned. What do you expect to see with something like that?
Well, on that unit that we just showed, the 8-inch Dobsonian, you can do quite a bit. From the moon, the planets, deep sky, galaxies, star clusters, nebulas. Although the difference between that is you're the go-to person.
Correct.
You need to find these objects, which could be fun and exciting, with an app or with a planisphere or some sort of map to help you locate objects. So aperture's where it's at.
Okay.
An 8-inch is the average size. There's more 8-inch telescopes, whether it's a reflector or a category design for astronomy, so you can see a little bit of everything with that.
Right.
Because it's small enough, but yet big enough to do quite a bit of astronomy, full spectrum from the planets all the way to deep sky.
Right. But as Frank has always told me, with anything, there is sort of no one telescope does everything.
No.
Correct?
A good telescope is having at least 3 of them.
Right, correct. And we already have one. That's our goal, is this year coming up to hopefully get into a big refractor, and we can do planets and stars with those. It's in the works. We don't know when that's going to happen though. But say we wanted to go already high end, like we saw back there with the Losmandy mount and the 10-inch. What could you expect what could your results be with that? Pretty much the sky's the limit with something like that, correct?
Yeah, well, when you get into high end, you're getting more precision optical to the glass and the mount for tracking and go-to as a go-to. So why are you spending more money? Do you go on a finer piece of equipment? Are you going to see more? Apertures where it's at, where you start with a 60 millimeter, 80 millimeter, 114, or an 8-inch tube. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's why are you paying more? Because you're buying refined, higher end piece of equipment. So
Right.
that's where the cost comes in. If somebody has a budget like this Dobsonian we showed over here can do as good as any that 8-inch I got go to, which is 4 times the price, but you're still gathering the same amount of light. You just don't have all the electronics, the heavy duty mount,
Right.
the heavy duty fork tines, those kind of things. But if it's a good piece of glass, aperture is where it's at.
So we're not in Texas, but in the telescope world, unfortunately, bigger is better all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I would suggest, and I'm sure Frank would too, that try to get the biggest telescope you can afford, so you're happy with your results. And if you think you have the sort of gumption and really the drive to want to go out there and star hop with the Dobsonian, you'll really learn a lot about the sky. I know that us personally, I don't know if I could do a Dobsonian. It's terrible. We sort of do things mediocre. We have enough equipment like that high-end Losmandy that it does all the work for us, and we don't have to be frustrated with trying to find something. Although that denotes us not knowing quite as much about the sky. Something that's manual, you'll learn more about the sky and where objects are to be able to help you on your journey into astronomy. But that's pretty much it. That's what it's going to take to get you into the scope world of astronomy. And don't forget that Frank is going to be here probably for a long time. And this is Stellar Vision Astronomy. Oh, not today. This is Stellar Vision Astronomy in Tucson, Arizona. And Frank is always eager to help newcomers out and get you going in the world of astronomy. It is a absolutely wonderful hobby. It's something that you can do. It's not physically demanding, and your family will like it because everybody can get involved, and it's really a good time. And Frank?
Yeah, it's fun, it's educational, it's a family affair.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And Frank, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting us
Sure.
take up your time in the shop today.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, and this has been a great time, and we're really glad to show you the shop and give you the information and pass it on that Frank has passed on to us. So we'll see you on one of the streams at Starlight Starbright Observatory. Thank you.